Welcome, everyone, back for another segment of Ask Mike, and we're coming off of Selection Sunday this Monday. Mike, Arkansas drawing Vermont. How'd you think, just generally, before we dive in? How excited are you?
That's the first question.
Well, all right, then let's get right into it then. I was going to ask how excited you are, but I guess you're going to know because Armand Abbey on Facebook, it says, what do you think of Arkansas's draw? Looks tough for a 4 seed.
Yeah, I don't like the location. I don't like
New York.
I don't like it any time a team gets sent. If you've got a team in the tournament and they got to travel a long way and travel outside the area where they normally play, you're kind of in an unusual situation, unusual surroundings. So you're going from here to Buffalo, and then 2 teams they would have to play to advance to the Sweet 16 are both from that part of the country. So they're going to have fans there. Vermont's going to have fans there. If you win that game, Gonzaga is going, or UConn's going to have fans there. And it's you know how students travel. It's like road trip. They like it. This is what they do every year. If the NCAA tournament is anywhere near your school and you're in, those students are going to go.
They usually have deals for tickets.
So I'm sure Vermont's going to have a lot of students, and students are the ones that make the most noise. There's other things involved. NCAA tournament venues are notoriously neutral when the game starts. That's because most of the people that locally are attending the event are in there on corporate tickets. You find out you have an NCAA tournament venue. What that means for local merchants is all these people are going to come in and fill up the hotels and eat at the restaurants. So it's good for our community. But we want people to go to the game. So we get these corporate tickets through the NCAA and we distribute them to people locally, and they go out and sit and watch the game, but they don't really have an interest in any team. So they just sort of sit there for a while and go, huh, and they're looking at rosters and things. But then they'll start to notice who the underdog is. And guess who that is in this game? Vermont. And then they know that Vermont is sort of local. It's about a 6-hour car ride to their campus. So they're from that part of the country. And it's that big school, little school. I'm not talking about the enrollment
American
of the school,
East school.
Yeah, American East versus SEC. They get into that, and so I don't have any doubt that in that game in particular, they're going to have the fans. So it's almost like a road game. So you don't like that part of it. On the other hand, you can look at it from a positive standpoint and say, when you look at Vermont's schedule, yes, they just poleaxed everybody. I think they won 20 of their last 22 games. They beat people badly. They won their conference tournament. They won their regular season. They won their conference tournament like 30-something points.
They won it by 40-something
points. They're used to beating people that badly. So that's all impressive. But they've played one ranked team all year long, and they lost that game. Arkansas played in 6 games against ranked teams, 5 ranked teams, and they won some of those. So their schedule is more difficult. They've had all these gut check games toward the end of the year, which should prepare them for a game like this. In other words, they've been in pressure situations. Vermont hasn't been in pressure situations because virtually every game they played for the last month and a half, they just blew their opponent out. So they're not used to being in close games. So how will they react to being in a close game? Hopefully it will be a close game, and we'll find out. So all of that's positive for Arkansas. The negatives are this, because I've seen this before. I've even seen it with Arkansas in the NCAA tournament. You're playing a team that plays at a slow pace, and you don't like to play at a slow pace. But here's the interesting part. Even though these guys are playing a slow-down game and they're only giving up 60 points a game, they're scoring over 70. So if you play slow basketball, how are you scoring over 70? Normally you're down below that. It's because they have this thing called offensive efficiency, and they're very good at it, which means that most of the time when they go down the floor, they score. Unlike Arkansas, who we see all the time go down, miss, go down, miss, go down, miss, and then they score. But it's okay because they play good enough defense that the other team doesn't score. The problem is these guys do score. So you got to figure out, why do they score? Well, they score because they spread out the floor, so they spread your defense out, and then they can do, with their passing game, they can do a lot of things. Whip, 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 ball goes around the perimeter. They're looking for somebody open. They're good three-point shooters. So before you know it, boom, they're hitting threes on you. You got to cover them out on the perimeter. You can't get sucked into any kind of double teams or anything like that. You got to have a lot of one-on-one defense. And then when they've got you spread out, they're looking for a cutter inside. Or the guard that has the ball may go inside himself. Well, you say, well, we got J.D. Notte back there, Mr. Take a Charge. So they'll just run over him and it'll be, They don't do it that way. Their guard attacks. He's not going to run into Notte. He's going to try to go, or run into J. Will. He's going to go around him and lay it up, maybe with the offhand, or maybe with the offhand, dish off an assist to a cutter that's coming behind, and they've scored on you.
Creative offense.
They're very good at this. So and look, I like the fact that I think Musselman's played against this guy before, this coach. He said he had. He knows what they do, and they're working on that right now. Arkansas is the best that I've seen in terms of pregame prep and knowing what the opponent does. And that's why I feel good about their chances to win. But there are intangibles to this that make it difficult. What I'm saying is, could have gotten an easier draw as a 4 seed. I think this is a fairly tough draw as a 4 seed. Again, even if you win, it's still, the bracket continues to be tough. But when you get in the tournament, you're just
no idea.
Whatever it happens, it happens. You can't sit around and focus on stuff like this. You just have to hope you go out and play and your team wins.
Arkansas was the benefit of who would have known they would have been the Elite Eight last year.
That's right.
And now they're getting prepared for Vermont. And watching the Razorbacks on the internet leave the watch party at the Broyles Center yesterday, Lindy Hopper posted, boy, they sure don't seem excited. What the heck? Not even Muss. I know their name was called in the first 2 minutes of the show.
Okay.
Didn't look excited. Did you see that?
Well, here's what happened. We posted this video on our website, and 2 or 3 of them really, and this one was the one where they walked out. So she saw this and assumed they're not very excited. Well, they were they kind of did the typical.
You knew they were in.
Yeah, that's the issue here. You're not some team out there that's hanging on the whole thing hoping you get in, and then all of a sudden your name pops up and you go ape over it. So that's not going to happen because you know you're in. They thought they'd be a 4 seed. They were a 4 seed. But the other thing is this. What are you supposed to do? Muss got up and he gave a scouting report, which I think is pretty unusual. Gave the fans a scouting report of Vermont. How many coaches can do that when they just found out that's who they're playing? But he can do it because he's gone up against this coach before. So he gives the scouting report, and then what do? They leave. You know why? Because they're going back over there to watch video and do their own scouting report and then get ready to practice. And guess what? They're just coming off their worst loss since early January. This was the first game since they started the comeback where they really didn't do anything at the end of the game. Even in their 2 losses during that stretch, they were close. They weren't close in this one. They fell apart at the end. So he knows that. You got to go back. You got to get ready. So I like the fact that nobody was smiling. They had their game faces on. They looked like, to me, a team that's ready to go back to work. I would be upset if they were smiling and hanging around with fans and doing high fives and all that stuff. That would be a bad sign. So actually what you think is bad is good.
Just focus. Just focus for Vermont. All right, about that loss we were talking about to the Aggies, Raymond Faison says, I'm struggling to understand the bad passes. Where did the energy go once they pulled to within 3 in the second half? Something doesn't feel right.
You know, I'm not sure. I'll give you a guess. They played like 9 gut check games toward the end of the season. Look at who they were playing. They were playing teams like Auburn. They were playing Kentucky. They were playing Tennessee twice. They were playing LSU. Those aren't easy. Those are games in which you have to pull every emotion. It's not just physical. Every emotion you've got in your body has to go into winning those games. And they won most of them, lost 2 of them. But I think they get in the tournament, and what are you doing? You're sitting there right off the bat. Man, we got LSU again. Can we beat them 3 times in a year? And then LSU's popping off, aren't they?
Yeah, they're hitting their stride.
They're popping off. So you're thinking, okay, that's going to be tough. And they put all their energy into that game, won it, and honestly were very convincing in winning it. And then what? Oh, here are these Aggies. We thought we were going to play Auburn. There's just no way you're not going to have a little bit of a letdown because you were all geared to LSU, Auburn, A&M. So you look at the first 2 games A&M played, and yeah, they upset Auburn, but you're sitting there thinking, well, Auburn overlooked them. We won't. And then they just didn't shoot well. Aggies playing great defense. But then there were some things that happened in that game. Every shot they put up that might have gone out, in and out, went in. There was a ball that went up and hit off the top of the backboard
and dropped in.
And you're watching that happen, and you're going, what is going on here? And then there was a critical moment. I can't remember when it was, 7, 8 minutes to go in the game. They got it down to 3. And they shot a 3 that went in and out. And then A&M went down and hit 2 threes. That's a 9-point swing. So instead of being right there, it went back up to 9 or 10 points. And then I think they just let go of it at that point. You don't tell yourself you are. You don't know it's happening. At some point, your body just has you let go. We've had to do this over and over and over and over again, come back in these games. This just isn't it.
Sometimes you can't complete all the comebacks.
Yeah. And then look at it from A&M's standpoint. They're fighting for their lives. They actually think they're going to get into the tournament. They keep winning. They
boy,
will.
what a letdown.
And so they just played above their heads, and so Arkansas loses that game. It's not a bad situation because you really want a team to go back, like we mentioned earlier, go back to work. You're coming off a game in which you looked like you did look. We can't go back to what we were in early January. So I think he's going to have their attention now.
It's a gut check game, especially when you want to lose. At least you lose when you're in. If you're Texas A&M and you lose, now you don't get in.
Yeah.
Sour taste in your mouth. All right. Lanny wants to know, on Hogville, did Muss ever explain what he meant when he mentioned distractions after the A&M game? And they have to get rid of the distractions before the NCAA tournament. Mike, what do you think he meant by those distractions?
I don't know. That's one of those things where, I wasn't there. So I couldn't ask the question, but somebody should have. What do you mean by distractions? Because I'm glad that somebody noticed that. That was curious to me. What distractions? What are we talking about here? Did they go down to Tampa and get on that boat and have too much fun? And then they stayed
they did
up
get
late?
on the boat.
And did it have something to do with the trash talking? You think you're going to play LSU, who trash talks you. You think you're going to play Auburn, who trash talks. I mean, the guy Auburn said some terrible things.
He said they'd beat the crap out of him.
So you're thinking, you get all into that stuff, and you're sitting around talking about that. Maybe Muss meant that was a distraction. You're not focusing on just playing. You're mad about all this stuff guys are saying to you, other team, and what people are saying. That could have been a distraction. Maybe something happened down there that we don't know about. Maybe it happened to one player. Maybe it happened to 2 or 3. What about Jay Will? He just wasn't himself. We all noticed it. He just didn't look like the way he'd been playing. So was he distracted about something? What about Note?
He didn't have a great tournament.
Note typically got into foul trouble, but remember he went out in the first half, and then Muss violated the rule and brought him back in, and then he was immediately back on the bench again. And it was almost like Muss would get mad at him and put him back out there, and then bring him back out again. So was there something going on with Note where he wasn't? He had distractions. I don't know. The only thing I know is whatever those distractions were, hopefully they get taken care of this week. But it was his way of saying, I think there was some things going on with us that can't go on now, because now we go into the real tournament and we can't have that.
Yeah, and distractions aren't ever going to win you any games. All right, Eddie Lynn asks, what was your reaction to Tony and Note continuing to play hard in the last seconds of the LSU game when the game was over and everybody else was just standing around waiting for the buzzer? There was a dunk and a steal. You almost never see that. So I guess you can't teach attitude and effort, right?
Yeah, you don't think about that a lot, but we're all used to that, right? Anytime a team has a comfortable lead, and you're down below the shot clock, and there's not enough time, whatever the shot clock is, 20 seconds or whatever, you're below that. So you just hold on to the ball. You've got the ball. You got it won. Just run out the last 20 seconds. And that's what we thought was going to happen, except Tony went down on the other end of the floor with the ball while LSU was standing around, and he dunked it. And then they kind of went, okay, I guess we got to inbound it. And here's Note. Whoop, I got the ball again. So the announcers on the game, Jimmy Dykes and whoever that other guy was.
Carl Ravitch, I believe, was on it.
Whatever they made a clear reference to that. That's not a good look. So what do I think? No, it's not a good look. If it happened a lot, if it was a thing Arkansas did all the time. Remember back when Jimmy Johnson was at Miami in football and they'd do that kind of stuff all the time?
Devo Davis did one against Auburn.
Well, I don't know. He was right there. It was a close game.
Dunk.
It was a close game. You throw it down, and he could. we talked about the fact that he could have ran it out, and he didn't. I don't think that was as obvious as this one, because you got a full 20, 30 seconds where you can go down there and just stand around and dribble, and instead you go down and dunk it, and then Note's trying to steal the ball again. The only thing I can conclude is that had something to do with them and LSU's players. Something was going on there where they were mad, right? And
stick it to them.
So, yeah, there was some stick it to you kind of stuff. And does that bother me? Not really. If it was a thing that happened a lot, I would say, yeah, Muss needs to talk to these guys. That's not a good look. But I think it was a very minor thing in the scope of things.
It's hard in competition. You get fired, you get heated. Those emotions come out all the time.
Again, it doesn't happen very often, no matter what you think about the other team. You don't usually do that. Well, but that's very rare. If they start doing it all the time, then we'll revisit this whole thing.
Here's an emotion question that has happened a few times. At Hogs or Rad wants to know on Twitter, what happened to post-game handshakes? Is that optional now? Who decides whether to do it or not? To me, it's a bad look.
You know, I'm just going to give my own opinion about what happened here. I think originally it was part of the COVID protocol. In other words, we're not going to shake hands because that's not good. That's the anti-COVID.
Spread the germ.
Yeah, you can do that. Nobody came back and has officially said COVID protocols are gone. There hasn't been an official declaration. So I think what happened is a lot of coaches got used to not doing that, and then they thought, this is pretty good, really. I don't want to shake hands with that bozo over there. So now what's happening is it looks like to me that maybe two things going on. Maybe sometimes it's predetermined, like they've already talked and said we're not going to do this after the game for whatever reason. But I think sometimes what happens is the losing coach just goes, and waves, and the other one goes, okay. Now, is it a bad look? Yeah, it is. I admit it.
Yeah, sportsmanship.
I think they should go back to doing it. But let me just say something about this, because this is my own personal opinion. Some of that is sportsmanship. Really? Here's what's going on. When I was in Little League under my first coach, 9 years old, first time I've ever been coached. Before that, we were always just kids running around the street playing games, football, basketball, baseball, or whatever we did. Now I've got a real coach. And the first practice, he said, after each game, you will shake hands. And he started talking about sportsmanship. And all that's well and good. But we had a 2.5-year winning streak going with our Little League team. People didn't beat us. And there was this team called the Giants, and they were a bunch of jerks. The guys on that team, I didn't like them. They weren't very good, but for whatever reason, we didn't play well one day, and they beat us. I didn't want to go shake their hands. I didn't. I wanted to go get in the car, and I did. I started out the side gate, and my mom met me and goes, go back over there and shake their hands. So I did. I'm shaking their hands, but what am I thinking while I'm doing that?
I hate these guys.
I don't like
want
you.
to do this.
So it's sportsmanship, apparently. No one knew how I really felt, but I'm out there shaking their hands when I really want to punch them in the face.
My God.
So
the grudge is strong even till when 9 years old.
Well, it's
you
just
still
I'm
hold
trying
on
to
to that
explain
loss
what
to
the
the
emotion
Giants.
was there. So you could say sportsmanship, but what if there's no real sportsmanship in your head? You're really thinking,
you just
I
put
hate
on the
this
show.
stuff. So yeah, you got to do it. It's what we all do it. They do it in baseball all the time, but I don't. That's why I'm not mad about the fact that sometimes they don't do it, because I'm not into that stuff. But I will honestly say it's a bad look.
If anyone from that Little League Giants team is watching, we don't like you here at the Patriot.
Some of those guys are still around. I go to reunions, and I'm like, one of them, the fat catcher, I just, hey, dude, why did you jump up and down and act like that when we beat you? We didn't do that to you when we beat you like 9 straight times. What's wrong with you?
Little League beef. I've never heard that before.
That's right.
All right, Pig's Feet. He asks, do you have the Hoop Hogs penciled in for the Final Four? Man, I had to go through the Zags to do that.
I got to be honest. I wouldn't do it. If I don't do a bracket. You guys all did a bracket. I never do a bracket. It's too confusing. I mean, come on. What would you do if you tried to really do an honest bracket? You'd probably be so wrong, because the tournament
is like a 1 in a bajillion chance to have a perfect one.
And people that win these brackets are usually just wackos that just put down crazy stuff. But if I was filling out a bracket, I would probably think, number one, you're in there with the number 1 overall seed. Now we know that could change. You might not even have to play them. But just looking at the bracket that Arkansas is in, what I've already mentioned, the fact that they're in Buffalo for 2 games that favor teams, at least in terms of the crowd support and the familiarity of surroundings and all that, favor those other 2 teams. And then if you win that, you got to go all the way over to San Francisco and play at Gonzaga. And it's not exactly in their front porch area, but Seattle's pretty close to San Francisco.
It's not going across the country.
Yeah, so I just think, I think the goal all year long is, okay, we went to the Elite 8 last year. Let's go there and go further this year. I think it's going to be hard to get to the Elite 8 because they got to beat the Zags just to get to the Elite 8. It's a harder path this year.
All right, we'll see how far they can go. Vermont's up first, and Team Otis asking, though, on another note, on Hogville, did you see that Will Wade got fired, the LSU basketball coach? Where would be a good landing spot for him?
Not in coaching. If you look at if you look at the allegations and it's been leaked out, if you look at some of the stuff that's in there, it's as bad as the old SMU thing. Where I don't think they're going to get the death penalty, but it's about as bad as that was. So I don't see him in coaching anymore, anywhere. I would say analyst. I don't think he's going to get a job as an analyst. Here's where I think he could end up. How about an NIL agent? You know, these players get these NIL agents to help them get better money deals.
You don't think he would do illegal things there, too?
Oh, I don't know, but he'd be good at getting you an NIL deal, wouldn't he? So maybe he'll just be an NIL agent.
Or pumping your gas at the nearest Exxon Mobil.
I don't think he'll do anything like that because the guy was making $8 million a year when he got fired. And even though they're not going to have to pay him a buyout, if he did anything with his money that other than just being completely crazy, he should be set for the rest of his life. You know.
Poor Whittle Will Wade, as you like to call him.
Yeah, Will Wade.
Will Wade. All right, Razorback Regneck says, the firing of Will Wade seems to shock most of the media, but I recall you saying more than once that the NCAA would eventually get him. I didn't think they would do it either. What do you know that a lot of us didn't, Mike?
Well, I don't have any in with the NCAA, I promise you. But here's what I was thinking all along. When I heard that wiretap, I actually didn't hear it. There was a transcript of it. This goes back 3 or 4 years. When I read that, I went, whoa, wait a minute. Even the NCAA can't ignore this. They've got to look into it. And a lot of people think just because you say that stuff on a wiretap, they got you. They don't. Will Wade, if that's all they had, he could come back and say, well, I was just kidding around with the guy. I didn't mean it. You can't just take what's on that wiretap, the audio part of it, and go after him. You have to prove that he actually
everyone on Twitter would be in trouble for things.
Yes, you have to actually prove that he went out and did those things. So it took him a while. But when you read what really came out of this thing, it went way beyond that wiretap. They got 3 more. The stuff he talks about is one of the major violations. They found 3 others, and they really did their homework. I mean, there's one in there where, oh man, this gets complicated. He apparently offered money, and there were text messages to this point. Offered money to a player through text messages, and they had various exchanges. His girlfriend breaks up with him, but later on she decides she wants a car. So she blackmails Will Wade. She basically sends him a series of text messages saying, I'm going to release these text messages, which I have off his phone, where you're admitting you paid him if you don't pay me. And Will Wade didn't go, hey, you're crazy. I didn't do that. Leave me alone. He didn't say that. He went, let's talk. Well, come on. Come on now. You know, and that's just one of them. There's another one where he apparently didn't just offer money to players. He offered to do favors for their friends. Their friends are getting money, and their friends are getting in school. Hey, can you get my friend in school there? My friend needs to get in school. Okay, we'll get him into school. I think there was one in there where a guy had a friend. Where there was guy had a friend overseas and he wanted to come to the United States. Hey, we'll get you into the country. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff on here.
It's just like being a puppet, people's puppet.
When you look at all of that, I'm not a fan of the NCAA, but I do say this. I think they knew they had to do this. They couldn't let it go. And so I give them credit. They took their time. Everybody's sitting around going, well, they're not going to do anything to them. That's what the original question referred to. But I just felt like they would, not because necessarily they're good guys, but because they had to. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people are asking. Okay, Okay, they got Will Wade, but there were other people involved in this thing. The Arizona coach is the only one that was fired. What about Bill Self? There's some allegations there as a part of that wiretap operation. Bruce Pearl at Auburn. They didn't catch Pearl himself on a wiretap, but one of his assistant coaches. Okay, here's what I think is going to happen. I think the NCAA is going to do what it did with Will Wade. They're going to come in and start investing. I think they're already doing it because there's more to it than that. Just because Bruce Pearl skated on this and they kind of suspended him for a few games.
Doesn't mean you can't find something.
Then he became coach of the year in the same year that he was suspended. I think they're still in there looking around. I'd be very nervous if I was an Auburn fan. I'd be very nervous if I was a Kansas fan because I think the NCAA knows it has to do this. Here's the problem. The NCAA is very, very close to becoming defunct. And what I mean by that is people are so fed up, and not just fans, ADs. I think everybody's looking at Indianapolis and going, you haven't provided good leadership. That's how we ended up with this NIL mess. It was your fault. You're not doing a good job. So I think in Indianapolis, they're trying to do the right thing now. They think, oh, we can't look bad anymore. And so a part of that is one of the complaints against the NCAA is this inconsistent enforcement. We're going to go after these guys, but we're going to leave these guys alone. They have to blow that up, shatter that. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. They have to prove that it's not true. And that's why I think if there's anything there, Auburn's going to get it. If there's anything there, Kansas is going to get it. May or may not. But
it's going to take some time, but we'll see how it goes down the road.
Will Wade may not be the last casualty of this wiretap.
I doubt it. And we're going to stick with this with kind of a multiple choice question. Alex for Hogs 88 wants to know, which of these is funnier? 1, Auburn getting eliminated before their rematch with us, or 2, LSU and Will Wade losing to us a third time in the same season?
You know, in retrospect, I'm not sure any of it's funny. It certainly wasn't funny. I mean, it was funny when it happened to Auburn until the team that beat Auburn came and beat you.
Yeah.
And then it's not funny anymore. It's like you're going to laugh at Auburn when you ran into the same problem.
Yeah.
And then Will Wade, I guess it's sort of funny, but he got fired, so it's not funny anymore. It's like, oh, okay, he's not our problem anymore. I won't laugh at him anymore. He's gone. Will Wade's out of your life. You're never going to have to watch him run around on the sidelines throwing a hissy fit about anything. He's just gone. You won't see him anymore, I don't believe.
Option 3, none of them. All right,
neither one of them are funny right now.
Jumpy asks, when we talk about the greatest Razorbacks of all time in basketball, why is Martin Terry never mentioned? He only played 2 seasons and during a downtime for Razorback basketball, but he put up very good numbers regardless. So, Martin Terry, why is he not mentioned in that conversation?
I think it was because where he was the period in which he played, which was right before the start of the Eddie Sutton era. He just, he gets overlooked. But here's what the guy did. For instance, he's not the all-time leading scorer at Arkansas. Todd Day is, but you know why he's not? Because he only played 2 years. If you look at Todd Day's average, I think was something like 18 points a game through that period of the 4 years. Well, Martin Terry averaged 26 one season and 28 the next season. So if you projected that through 4 seasons, he'd be the all-time scoring leader of all time. I mean, look at that, 47 points. This is 40-point games he had. 47 points against SMU, 46 points against A&M, 43 points against Memphis, 40 points against Southern Illinois. He did some amazing things. He just played at the wrong time. Now, from time to time, people will talk about him, especially those that remember what he did. But unfortunately, fans tend to remember when things got better with the team, not when they were bad. And really, honestly, Martin Terry, because Arkansas has a long history of success in basketball. There was just this period kind of in the 60s into the 70s where things went bad. And then after that, ever since then, even the bad teams during the 2000s, they weren't terrible like they were at some point from 60s on into the early 70s. And I think that's why he's not mentioned more often than he is.
Well, at least he's getting some recognition now. Spring football started on Sunday. Let's get to some questions now. At Mousetown says, I see where Sam Pittman got raises for all his coaches. Over $6 million for the staff. which is supposed to be a record. That's good, but why is his own salary still being negotiated? Is Sexton asking for too much money, his agent?
Okay, you can split that into two different groups of the fan base, and I'm going to talk about overwhelmingly the bigger group, because most people seem to understand that this guy came in and took Arkansas from the embarrassment of the Chad Morris years, which was the low point in the entire history of Hog football, and in just 1 year, he at least made Arkansas a team you had to worry about if you played them. They only won 3 conference games that year, but they could have won 3 more, and they'd gone 2 years without winning a conference game. Teams didn't respect them, and now he brought the respectability back. So that alone puts him up there in the eyes of a lot of fans. He got hired for $3 million a year. You know what that is? That ranks 12th in the SEC in salaries. So he comes back and he does all that. Well, what happens? He didn't get a raise. He's still making $3 million. Now, he had bonuses that were put into his contract.
Yeah, he did.
And he got up to about 3.7, but his base salary remained the same going into this year. Well, this year, give me a break. They won 9 games. I mean, seriously? You went from 2 and 10 seasons to winning 9 games in 1 season in 2 years? You got to give this guy a raise.
Your recruiting's up, getting 4 stars left and right.
His recruiting has gone through the roof right now. So there's just no way you're not going to give him a raise. The question is how much, and that's sort of what the question was. Is he asking for $5 million, $8 million? What's he doing here? I'm going to say anything $5 million or below, I think it'll be negotiated without a problem, because he's earned that. He's earned it. I don't even know where $5 million would rank him in the SEC. I haven't looked, but it'd be still probably down there a bit, because a bunch of them are making $8, $9 million.
Saban's like 9.
Saban's
Florida's
at 9.
making.
Brian Kelly's
making 15
came in at 9. Jimbo's at 9. So, I don't think he's going to go crazy with this thing with Jimmy Sexton and ask for $9 million, $8 million. But if Sexton's over there saying I want 5, and I think a $100 check will probably eventually accept that. So that's where I think most fans are. I think they understand that. They understand that you're going to have to pay a coach if he did what this guy has done, and he's changed the whole persona of Razorback football. But you do have another group of people, and I wouldn't describe them as being ungrateful, not understanding that Sam deserves this. They're reacting to something else, and that is that in their minds, college athletics, and specifically football, has become all about money anymore and not much else. And they love the idea that Pittman came in and said he didn't even know what his salary was. He took this job without even knowing it. Money wasn't what he was about. They love that idea. Well, then all of a sudden when he announces he's changing to this cutthroat agent, Jimmy Sexton, they're going, wait a minute.
Money may be part of it.
Is he totally different now? Well, I don't think he's different. But I do think what these fans, this would be their argument. And I'm going to backtrack to something I read about 2 weeks ago. It was a newspaper article from 1973. Eddie Sutton was hired at Arkansas for $250,000 a year. Now, if you adjust that for inflation and bring it forth to when Musselman was hired, then if nothing else changed, just inflation, Musselman would have been hired for about $250,000. Well, we know he got about $2.67 million in there. So what that tells me, and I think this is pretty much the case, coaches' salaries have probably increased tenfold since the 70s, even with regard to inflation. You can adjust for inflation, it's still up tenfold from what it was. Here's another way to look at it. When Eddie Sutton was hired, I remember looking at that one time and thinking, because I was in East Texas at the time, I came a year later. As a sports anchor at a small market in East Texas, I was making about a third of what he was making. If you translate that to today, a third of what Musselman came here at $2.7 million, that's about $800,000. Could you explain to me what TV anchor, reporter, any person involved in TV sports here in Arkansas or anywhere outside of a gigantic market would even approach $800,000 a year? No. We are middle-class people. We're out there working for middle-class money like most of you are. So what's happened is these salaries have jumped astronomically, and some of us haven't even noticed. But these fans I'm talking about have noticed. And they don't like it because, and especially when you throw in NIL and all that stuff, all they think now is it's all become professional sports. I saw a thing on the internet yesterday where somebody says this new, whatever it is, football league, this other alternative football league, it's not going to work because we already have another league. It's called college football. So they're very
stronger than ever.
They are very burnt out on this whole thing, and so I think this is part of the reaction to Pittman, not against Pittman himself, but just this notion of, okay, we're going to get better. He's a great coach, and now we're going to be paying him $9 million a year in 2 or 3 years. The truth is, if they win the SEC, yes, you will be paying him $9 million a year, and the reason you will
your
do
worth, know your value.
You need to understand this is it's our economic system. It's supply and demand. If you don't pay him that, somebody else pays him that. And your athletic directors know that, and they'll pay it because the money is there. The money is there from TV. The money is there from gate receipts. Cost of going to a game keeps going up. The donation levels keep going up. And as long as ESPN is paying these huge contracts to a conference like the SEC, as long as you're paying $8,000 a year just for the right to buy football tickets, as long as that stuff's going on, it's going to be this way. The only way it would change is if all of a sudden that crumbled. If ESPN went out of business and you had to have somebody else come in and do this, and they say, look, we can't pay what they did. They went out of business.
Yeah,
then maybe the money goes back down. Then all of a sudden fans don't come as much because you're charging too much, and then they have to look at stadiums that aren't full. Then maybe they have to adjust their ticket prices. I don't know that this is going to happen, but that's the only way that all of this, how much money you're paying these coaches and these NIL deals and all this, the only way that's going back down is if there's a downturn in football.
And like you said, one
football.
thing remains. If you keep winning, you got to dig deep in your pockets for coaches. That's just the thick of it.
That's just the way it is.
Blood Red Hog wants to know, you were at practice, the first spring practice on Sunday. So which football player among the transfers and early enrollees do you see having an immediate impact and possibly starting this fall?
Okay, I don't really see any of the freshmen having a big impact. I don't see them starting. We got some graphics on this, and I'm going to go with the grad transfers. These are 5 guys, and Arkansas's grad transfer or portal. They aren't all grad transfers, but they're people out of the portal here to Arkansas
first one
from
makes
some
sense
other place.
Immediately.
So you look at these guys, Jaden Hazelwood, wide receiver out of Oklahoma, he's a 5-star. Landon Jackson, defensive end out of LSU, 4-star. Drew Sanders, linebacker from Alabama, 4-star. All these guys played at, Sanders played at Alabama, started many games at Alabama. Jackson started at LSU. Drew Sanders, Dwight McLaughlin, cornerback at LSU, a 4-star. And then this Latavius Brini, Georgia nickelback. I mean, he started 11 games for the national champions last year. So when you bring these kind of guys in, yes, they're going to have an impact on this team in the fall, and most of them will probably start. Because of that, I don't see true freshmen coming in and starting. There might be 1 or 2 of the new guys that could have the early enrollees that could have an impact, but mostly what you're going to look for is this fall is those transfers.
Especially on the defensive end where they lost so many people. That'll be where a lot of holes will be filled.
There are a couple of guys that aren't on that list that have come in since. So.
Georgia Tech had a transfer from Georgia Tech on the defensive line. That'll be a big one as well. All right, we're going to finish up right now with a little bit of baseball. Little Wheezy says the baseball team has improved but are not playing great baseball. What do you expect from them as the conference season begins and the competition gets tougher?
Okay, there's kind of good news and bad news here, and I got to
which one are you giving first?
Notes. Well, let's start with the batting average. This is good news.
There you go.
Because I've been talking about hitting, and that was my concern.
That was last week, yeah.
2 weeks ago, they hit a team low of around 220 in their team batting average. I've never seen that at Arkansas. Really concerned about that. After the last 2 weeks, and especially this past weekend, it's up to 276. That's a bump. That's a very good team batting average. And it could get better. We don't know. I mean, it probably will go down a little bit because you're about to start playing SEC teams. But if they start continuing to hit more and the hitting comes around as people said it would, maybe it even goes up higher than that. I liked what they did this past weekend. They played small ball. There were sack bunts, bunt singles, a successful safety squeeze. So we've been saying all this stuff about they're swinging for the fences. They're not trying to hit line drives. Well, they were doing some of that, and that was good to see. But in doing that, guess what? They started hitting home runs, and that's been the problem all along.
Not
They
just
haven't
home runs,
been
grand
hitting
slams.
Arkansas is a home run hitting team by philosophy. They weren't hitting home runs, and we were told by Dave Van Horn it was all about the wind. Can't hit home runs when it's cold and when the wind's blowing in. They hit 9 home runs in 4 games, 2 grand slams.
Both by Caden Wallace.
Both by Caden Wallace. So they did all this stuff. They scored 37 runs in 4 games. So when you talk about
12,
hitting,
10.
all of that is really good as you prepare this week to go into SEC play this coming weekend. But there's always bad news, isn't there?
Yeah, give it to us, Mike. What do we got?
So I've been sitting here talking about, hey, the pitching's not the problem. The pitching, now the pitching is the problem. The team ERA jumped from 2.8 to 3.24. That's a heck of a jump.
In one series.
Connor Nolan, he's been pitching pretty well, and he was pitching well the other day. I think DVH left him in too long. He ended up getting charged, I think, with 4 runs, maybe 3. But if he'd come out a little earlier, that wouldn't have happened. He did.
They tried to get him that 100 to 100 pitch mark.
Pitching a shutout, I think.
Yeah.
So Connor's up to 3.52. That's not what you want from your Friday night guy. You want somewhere in the 2s, especially as you head into SEC play. Jackson Wiggins, he's your Sunday guy. He ballooned all the way up to 4.35, and he'd been pretty consistent. He was cruising along through 3 innings yesterday, and then all of a sudden he couldn't throw a strike. And so he gets charged with a bunch of runs. And then you got Cole Ramage. Cole Ramage is supposedly your long reliever guy, the first guy out of the bullpen if it's still early in a game and you got to go for a few innings. He's done that twice, and both times ended up being the biggest 2 innings that they've had in terms of giving up runs. Remember the 7-inning run in the southeastern Louisiana game? They gave up 7 runs in 1 inning. He was a big part of that. Now there was 6 runs they gave up against
in game
Illinois,
4
Chicago.
against, yeah.
And he was a part of that. And his ERA is up to 4.50.
Yeah.
So I don't know if DVH is going to make a change there. They've got a lot of young pitchers that have really looked promising, but they haven't pitched a lot. So does he bite the bullet and put somebody else in there the next time on long relief and kind of move Ramage down some and maybe make him a midweek long relief or whatever? I don't know. But the point is, SEC play starts this
After
weekend.
Grambling State, it does. Kentucky.
I really feel better about their hitting. I suddenly don't feel very good about their pitching.
It's a role reversal with this team.
It is a complete role reversal.
We'll see. Grambling State and then Kentucky is their first SEC matchup. All right, we're going to our final question, and it's a second one for Lanny. Rarely do we get a double in our shows. He's back. He says, I know you're not a fan of the Aggies. Who is? What is your reaction when they came up empty on Selection Sunday? I feel like we could just take the first question. Just who is? But yeah, what was your reaction? They got snubbed, didn't make the SEC or the NCAA tournament.
There's been a real negative reaction in the media to that. And I'm not talking about Aggie media. I'm talking all over college basketball. There's media people, national people that are going, wait a minute, this is wrong.
Well, when Michigan gets in.
A lot of fans of schools other than the Aggies are saying it's wrong. And then I've got to be, I don't stay in touch with what they say in College Station around the Houston area, but I got to believe the Aggies are going absolutely bonkers. I haven't seen any video of their watch party.
Oh, they probably don't want to send that out.
But if that leaked out, probably it would be like horrible. It'd be like watching a horror movie.
It'd probably just be bleeps
because I think they thought they were in. To all of those people who say this is wrong, I would say you are not paying attention to what the selection committee does, because if there's anything you can say about the selection committee, it's consistent on this matter. The selection committee has always said getting in is all about your total body of work, not what you did at the end of the season. A loss in December, a losses in January count just like they would anywhere else. Well, the outrage comes from all these people that said, well, A&M won like 8 of their last 10 games, and they played some really good teams, and look what they did in the SEC tournament, and blah, blah, blah. Yes, they also lost 8 straight games from mid-January to mid-February. And if you throw in winning 8 of 10 on out, they still end up with a below 500 during that stretch. So from the middle of January all the way to right now today, they're still below 500.
Yeah.
And that's the way the committee that looks at it. They don't go, boy, they got hot. They say, yes, but you also were bad during this period of time. So the only way you were going to get in is in the automatic bid, and they needed to beat Tennessee, and they didn't come close to beating Tennessee. Now, that's the logic of it. Now let me throw my A&M bias in here, bias against A&M.
This is what we like to end the show on.
Because I've been around Aggies since I was at least 5 or 6 years old. Where I grew up, there were Aggies everywhere. Here's what I would say about the Aggies. I don't care what sport you're talking about. The Aggies always think they're up here, and they're really usually down here. So this is just another example of this. They thought, whoa, we've won all these games. We're exciting. Everybody knows it. We're up here in the minds of the selection committee, when actually they were down here. So you're going to go play in the NIT. I think back to football season last year, and I want to throw in the SEC Media Days because you were there. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So let's lay out the layout for the hotel where Media Days is. You got second floor, you got all these rooms where all these players and coaches are being interviewed. Then between, in a sort of rectangle where all these rooms are around it, you've got this big area where media does live shots and sort of
like
tape reports.
Yeah.
So they're all out there together. And most of us are pretty respectful of each other. If you, Nick, are standing there.
I remember where you're going with this.
If you, Nick, are standing there and you've got to send back a report, or we're taping something, you're not going to talk real loud. You're going to talk loud enough into the mic where it's being recorded and Arkansas fans back here can see. But you're not going to scream and shout. These Aggie bozos are over in the corner, and they are just shouting this stuff. And what they're basically saying is, A&M is thought to be one of the major contenders for a national championship this year. And I'm thinking, where did they get that? Who said that? And I'm thinking, first of all, are you real media saying that stuff?
They're a couple young kids. Yeah, I don't remember who they were.
But this is typical. What did I say? Aggies always think they're up here. They're actually down there. So they're going to win the national championship, but oops, nope, you finished in a 4-way tie for third. And you got a really crummy bowl game, and you didn't go. You said you had COVID, but it was probably because you thought you were going to get in the SEC championship game. And then if you win that, you're going to go to the national championship playoffs. And, hey, we're going to win a national championship. Oops, we're going to the Ding Dong Bowl.
The Gator Bowl, whatever the heck it was.
We have COVID. You know, again, Aggies think they're up here. They're actually down here. Now,
that was the thing that happened. They were super loud during our.
And saying they were odds-on favorites.
They were, and they were right behind us, and we were trying to do our shows, and they were very.
You remember me looking at them, going, "Where did they get this?
He was not happy.
Where did they get this? They're going to win the national championship." So now we go forward to next year, and I will admit it if I'm wrong, right here on this show. But here's what they're saying now. Well, we had the #1 recruiting class in football in the country. Yeah, we bought it with NIL money. What I'm hearing is they're going to get busted on that. Because the one rule in NIL, there's only two, and the one big rule is you can't offer before they sign.
Right.
And so I think there are people that think that I think the NCAA is trying to figure out if they did that. But anyway, they're saying they're going to win it all because they had the #1 signing class. Aggies are now saying we're up here because of our recruiting class. I'm saying they're still down here, and we'll see if that trend continues.
That's the theme of the show. We think we're up here. We're down here. Although I don't believe Michigan should have got in 3 games above 500, but that's just me for the NCAA tournament.
There are some inconsistencies, but all I'm saying is that thing with A&M was predictable because of what happened to them in that 1-month period where they lost 8 straight games.
And I don't think you're mad about it. I don't think you're mad not to see the Aggies in the NCAA tournament. I think
there's
a
gloating.
Slight joy
I'm just
of it.
saying that's I expected it. I told everybody they've got to beat Tennessee because then they'll have the automatic bid and it won't be up to the committee. And they didn't, and they didn't get in.
We'll see if Arkansas is still dancing. They play Vermont on Thursday. It's an 8:20 tip. We can be back here Monday still talking basketball, dead or alive. We'll see what Arkansas's men and women do in the NCAA tournament. That's Ask Mike. More next week.